my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course. And man, I am so damn excited about today's show because I have an incredible guest hopping on here to talk about some deep shit that I feel like is not on most of our radars in our community. The idea of life coaching, right? I think therapy is something that is new to many of us. And the idea of life coaching is something that, man, I just found out a few years ago, and it took me a while to get on board with it. But this person who's going to be on today's show is just an incredible woman doing incredible work. Her name is Esperanza Lebron, and she has been recommended by Bren J, a friend of the show. But I'm just excited to share, I think, a different world than most of us grew up with or aware of, right? And really tackle the things that keep us from achieving our goals, right? I'm somebody who's always trying to hack my mind and figure out what exactly has been the hindrance to me not achieving things, or on the other side of it, what has been the thing that keeps me operating on a high level, and how do I figure out a way to stay in that place on a consistent basis, right? But a big part of that is working through your shit and planning and learning and, downloading effective tools that help optimize you to be the best version of yourself, right? And that's a team effort, right? It's not something that we all just go about our lives and we can figure all this shit out on our own. We need help. I don't think any person is an island, right? It's just like why I have a therapist to help me work through shit. I have a life coach who helps me, organize ideas and in a practical sense, and even what we're talking about today with Esperanza, even deeper, where she kind of talks about some of the childhood things, the traumas, the beliefs that we've downloaded, that we've been grown up, that we were taught as a kid by the people in our lives, how they play out and how we can, get rid of them in order to make sure that we're operating as our best self, and we're going to talk about a ton of different things. She has an incredible story of literally being a teenage mother to now being a very successful life coach and motivational speaker. So I'm really excited to have her on the show. Particularly, she's a woman of color who is operating in a space where you don't often see people who look like us. So just so empowering on so many different levels. So we're gonna just hop into that conversation. It'll be one long mi gente segment for today's show. No Ask A Gringo, because I'll be honest with y'all, I don't know how I'm still here speaking right now. I'm fighting a nasty sinus infection. So I'm gonna present to you this incredible interview that we did. I'm really excited about it, but I don't have it in me to do anything extra right now. I apologize. I gotta get some sleep. But with that said, this is an incredible conversation, and I'm so excited to share with you. And let's get into it in our Mi Gente segment. Mi Gente! My guest today, she is a life coach and motivational speaker, a boss as well. Esperanza Lebron, how you feeling?
Oh my God, I'm feeling so good. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here because, well, you come highly recommended by a friend of the show, Brenda. But I'm excited to tackle something that I feel like, particularly for our community, life coaching and the idea of man, even just talking about your feelings in general. All of that is like new stuff. And what you do is beyond I feel like the comprehension of most people that I've grown up with in my family or whatever it might be. So I'm really excited to bring something of value that I think not a lot of people are on from our community.
Yes. And actually, that was one of the big driving factors. There's not a lot of people that look like me, that look like us in this space. Of course, it's growing more and more every day. But once I saw the lack of representation, I was like, that's it. That is where my purpose needs to be fulfilled. I think I've always been a life coach at heart. And so now being able to offer coaching in a community setting is one of the most beautiful things I've ever done.
I love that you're walking in your purpose. So, I mean, I want to get into your story. There's so much to talk about, but let's first and foremost, like, set the tone here. Anybody who's not familiar, what exactly is a life coach? How would you explain the work that you do on a regular basis?
Yeah. So for everyone listening, just take a moment and think about all of the things that you say one day you're going to do. So I
Mm,
call this our one day, someday list. So it's like, oh, one day I'm going to do this. Someday I'm going to do this. And just notice how long that list has been idle for.
mm,
And so as a life coach, what I do is I help my clients really get into understanding by creating, number one, awareness of where we are now and the gap to where we want to be. And then we take that list and we actually start implementing, like, what is it that we are believing about ourselves that's preventing us from actually getting this goal done, from
mm,
actually having this job, having this body, having this relationship, having this house, saving this money? I mean, you can insert whatever it is, but for a majority of my clients, those are some of the main things that we work on. And a life coach really will help you uncover what you've been believing about yourself
mm.
and what kind of feelings that you're resisting feeling. And then you kind of partner together to start walking that trail and getting there no matter what.
Mm. I love that. It's very, very beautifully said. I mean, I think I started seeing a life coach probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I think I was too embarrassed to tell people that I was seeing somebody whose job title is a life coach, right? Because my friends would have thought I was bugging at the time. How did you even get into this world, like, of discovering life coach was even something that you could do, not only as a career, but then expanding even bigger than that as something you can use to help your community and give back?
Yeah. So I really believe I was always destined to be a life coach. And so
Mm,
let me start by saying that I had my sons when I was 15 and 17. So I
mm,
was your stereotypical teen mom on welfare. I lived in Section 8 housing. When I got pregnant, I was told, you just ruined your life. You're never going to be
mm,
able to do anything. So I was just kind of like, when I think back, I was at the mercy of what everybody else was telling me what was possible for me, which was not
sure.
much.
Mm,
I dropped out of school and I just remember one day I was reading this book and it's called A Piece of Cake by Cupcake Brown. So I'm
mhm,
18 years old riding the bus to work and this woman had this life that was in my head, like way worse than anything I was experiencing. And she was able to get out. And from that moment, there was like this feeling. I think it was the very first time I ever experienced what something could be possible.
mhm,
And I decided to start rewriting the narrative. Now, you think about an 18-year-old mom with two kids, single, on welfare. Like, I didn't have a high school diploma. I didn't have anything really. My mindset was totally different. I mean, I knew more about debt than I did about savings at 18.
mm,
And I just decided one day, like, but what if that could be possible? And the idea kept swirling in my head.
mhm.
And when I was 21, I wrote my very first goal down. It took like 3 years for me
Sure.
yeah, 3 years for me to
Yeah.
even get to the place of like actually writing a goal down. And
Yeah.
that goal was get a high school diploma.
Wow.
And I remember writing that and I started crying, just thinking
Mm,
about, like, it's making me emotional now,
mm,
thinking about actually that being possible for me, someone like me, right? Because I had this narrative of what everybody told me that I could be in my head.
mhm,
And that little goal manifested. And it went from being a high school dropout at 21 to within 5 years, I was a United States Army officer.
mm,
And so when I say I've always been destined to be a life coach, I remember looking back every single time, the word that I always heard was like, no, not you. I believe, like, I have so much love for underdogs because that is who I am at heart. That's who I was. Every single time life threw something at me, I was always like, but what if it is possible? There was always this little tiny coach in my head,
mhm,
thinking like, but maybe it's you. And I kept thinking in my head, I don't see anybody out there like me
mhm,
doing. I didn't even know what a life coach was. But there was always this small voice saying, like, just go first, go first. And then looking back, I'm thinking, if I was able to go from all of that kind of narrative, that stereotypical teen mom on welfare to where I am now, how could I not? How could I not use my voice? How could I not use this to represent and to bring and lift everyone else up?
mm,
So there was this like there was this weaving theme of going first throughout my life. And the first time I did think about coaching, I saw this ad for it. I didn't really know what it was, but then when I was like, there's actually somebody that can get paid for helping other people achieve their goals and their wildest dreams. I want to do that. But I didn't see anybody that I knew doing it. And so I went into the military instead. But there was always that voice, like, this is the path for you, like this spiritual knowing. And in 2020 is when I actually listened and jumped all in.
Wow. That's so beautiful. You're touching on a number of different things. I want to stay in the place of 18-year-old you, mother of two, riding the bus, wanting better for yourself and feeling inspired in that moment. And I think a lot of people get that. We see the Instagram quote that inspires us, or the YouTube video, or the book that we read. But the next part is taking action on it, right? And oftentimes the people around us are sort of the hardest barrier to entry towards fixing our lives, right? Because many times those people who are in a similar circumstance to us can't envision a life outside of what they already know. So they kind of impose their own doubts onto you when you're talking about shit that they can't really fathom, right? So were there any circumstances or people around you that were kind of like, this is what your life is. You're crazy thinking you could be doing anything else but this. And how did you kind of push past that?
Oh my God, absolutely. So there's a big distinction between being inspired and motivated and actually executing and taking that massive action. In the beginning, people thought I was crazy. Like, I remember seeing this woman in the grocery store pushing a cart, and she had two sons like me. But the difference between her and I is she was wearing a uniform. She was a soldier. And that was the very first time that thought was even like came to my awareness. Like, oh, what if I could do that? And I went home and I talked to my parents about it. And I was like, I think I'm going to join the Army. And they, like, nobody could see the vision that I had for my life. The only thing that they could see, even though that they love me, is who I was in that moment. Like, so people can see our past selves and our current selves, but the only person that has to see the vision is you. Like, that's our job, is to see the vision and hold it. And then those people are going to eventually come with you, or they're going to fall off, right, along your journey, depending on the relationship. But it was always like, well, what about, just kind of like, I think in their head, the people around me, my family, my friends, it felt unsafe for me to do that. So it was kind of like, yeah, it's a nice dream, but you need to, this is what I heard, you need to be realistic. Like, you don't even have you just got at this point, I had just got my high school diploma. So they're like, you need to really be realistic. Like, kind of like, who do you think you are kind of thing?
Of course.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of that. And even to this day, I have some family members and some friends that still kind of like distance themselves because they can't see me here now. They still see me as who I was. So maybe it's like, I did something, like I cheated, or like, how did you even get there? Because they could never see this vision of me now.
Yeah. There's an interesting, I don't know, but for whatever reason, when the dynamic of a relationship changes, right? Some people have a hard time adapting to no longer being able to have the same place that they once held in your life. You know what I mean? Like, I know for me, a lot of the friends that I grew up with, were like older brother kind of figures. And I was always the younger brother figure within our group circle. And they were the, high school jocks who were popular. And I was sort of just like popular by association. And then when things started to happen for me, our relationship changed. And a lot of them couldn't handle kind of playing second fiddle to, all the things that I had going on. And yeah, it's tough. You do sometimes have to either intentionally separate, or that friendship sort of drifts apart on its own because of some other people's unwillingness to kind of evolve or allow you to evolve, I guess it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And many times it's because some people are they're projecting their feelings of sometimes it could be they can feel inferior to you, which I don't ever understand why. I am still the same person, right? Like, we're still the same human. We've just evolved and we have a different mindset. But it's always something within their own thought and what they're thinking about and feeling. And then they're projecting that on us. So their decision to stay, their decision to not see us at that next level actually has nothing to do with us. And that took a long time for me to understand.
Yeah. you start realizing people are just kind of projecting their own fears, their own doubts, their own insecurities onto you, you know? And I noticed this with my mother. She's a very anxious type, right? So she's not trying to hold me back, but she herself is so anxious that she's putting out the worst case scenario into something, right? And unknowingly is then putting doubt into my mind of, oh shit, maybe I should rethink this crazy thing that I'm doing, you know? But yeah, to your point, it is them kind of projecting their own stuff onto us, and we have to be aware of that in order to be able to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like the power of really understanding the way that you think about yourself. So your self-concept and your thoughts, because that's what's going to allow you to champion yourself as you evolve when other people that we love and care are trying to, you know, like back to me, like saying, you just got to be realistic. And now my family, they're like, whatever Esperanza says she's going to do, whatever Hopi says she's going to do, she's going to do it. My dad's like, you're always in the clouds, but somehow you always get there. So I'm backing out.
Right. No, that's beautiful. And it's funny. So one thing I feel like I've run into is now you've kind of turned the non-believers into believers, at least some of them, right? I know I have for my parents.
Yes.
But then their whole dynamic is, well, you're just something special. You know what I mean? No, you can't expect anybody else to kind of recreate chasing their dreams in the same way as you. And, you know, for me, while I would like to think of myself as having some sort of special gift or something that has brought me here, at the same time, I know that I'm not the only person who can achieve what they want to do, right? I know that it's possible for me just like it is for anybody else. So what do you kind of think are some of the most common things that you see when you talk to people, and particularly from our community, that is sort of that factor between the people who kind of just accept being the mother of two on welfare for the entirety of their life, and the other people who decide, like, this is not who I'm going to be, and I'm going to do whatever I have to change that?
Yeah, I think this is such the biggest piece for those of us who were able to break from that mold and actually change. I feel it's so important for us to use our voice here, because people that are listening to us, people that are listening to you, they're going to see possibility in your breakthrough for them, right? So that's what happened to me reading that book. I hear this young girl who's like being a prostitute by the age of 13, and she ends up becoming a lawyer. And I'm thinking, my life is not that bad. Like maybe I could do something too. But that seed is planted, the seed of possibility, the seed of awareness. Like before I read that book, I literally never even knew there was another option out there. Nobody was telling me, you can go to college, you can still have this. It was like, you are done. You messed up. Like, this is the best it's going to be. And I think it's our duty to share our stories. It's our duty to share our voice, especially for people that look like us, because there could be somebody out there thinking that something like this is possible for them. But every time that they don't see representation in themselves out there, that possibility gets diminished. And we literally have the opportunity to allow people to break possibility open for themselves every time they hear our breakthroughs, every time they see us going to a new level. Yeah, there's going to be some people that are, you know, kind of doubting it and not willing to change. But then there's so many other people that are ready for that next step. And this is the one thing that they needed to hear in order to start taking action and going that way.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that's why this work is so important, you know, and I believe it's like a domino effect, you know what I mean? And you don't know who it's touching or where it's leading to, or how many people are going to be sort of inspired by proxy of your message, you know, and that's the kind of beauty of just putting all of this out there and being, you know, honest and vulnerable. And, you know, in that same kind of token, I am curious about when you do join the military, right? Because this is a big goal for you that you had for yourself, and you are proving people wrong. But what often happens is when we have a goal, it's never exactly what we thought it would be, right? So sometimes we can be left feeling empty or uncomfortable. I imagine in a particular situation like that, I can guess some imposter syndrome probably creeped up at times for you in that process. So can you kind of talk about what happens when you do achieve one of your goals, the leveling up that is necessary mentally to you know, exist in that space and be unafraid to take up space when you're there?
Oh, such a good question. Taking up space. Yes. So I will say there was a lot of imposter syndrome. There was a lot of self-doubt. And on the other side, there was a lot of championing, like, you can do this. And I really attribute my success to the power of visualization. So I would visualize myself in uniform. I would visualize myself at the finish line. And I think it's important to note that when I first went to, so I was in the enlisted side and the officer side. So when I first went to join the Army, I was just finishing my bachelor's degree. So I could have went in as an officer already, but I had self-doubt in my head. And I told myself the story, like, I'm going to negotiate and I'm going to just stay in the enlisted side. Number one, because I didn't feel good enough to be an officer. And number two, there was this feeling of me, eventually, if I do want to be an officer, I want to know what it feels like in the soldier's shoes. I want to know from their perspective of the people I'm going to be leading. So I go to basic training, and basic training in the Army is 10 weeks long. And in week 8, you have to qualify to shoot. I've never shot a gun before in my life, and I failed. I tried 23 times and I failed. So I was given the opportunity to go home. And in that moment, every part of my entire body wanted to say, like, yes, you're not good enough. This is just showing us we can't do it. Go home. And then there was this other part that was saying, finish what you came for. And so I restarted and did basic training all over again, which was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do. But again, even back then, I was using that power of visualization just to kind of get me through there. So then when I graduated, I came back, I applied for an ROTC scholarship, and I got it for my master's degree. And there was, like, my self-concept, all of the things that I needed to think about myself in order to take up the space that I needed. It was having a hard time catching up. Like, I kind of felt like maybe they messed up when they were reading my application. Maybe they messed up when they gave me a secret security clearance. Maybe they messed up. Like, I kept thinking that somebody was going to come and say, oh, we were just kidding about you. Like, you know that you shouldn't be here, and that never happened. Even when I commissioned and I took over in Fort Bliss, I was still waiting for that day. And then I realized, like, okay, that's not going to happen. We made it. And I just remember crying, like, it's finally accepting it and allowing that triumph, that win, that perseverance. And I get so emotional from it because that was not easy. And on the outside, I'm running a shop of soldiers, and on the outside, like, I'm the leader, and people are looking up to me and getting their direction from me. And on the inside, my self-confidence is, like, doing its best to trying to catch up and stay. So when I go home, it was like there was so much contrast. There was like this inner dialogue, like, still questioning, do we really belong here? Do we really belong here? And here's the thing, unless we actually answer those questions that are coming up inside, we're never going to be able to get on the other side of them. Every single day is going to feel like imposter syndrome. Every single day is going to feel like self-doubt. All of the decisions will be clouded. And I had this space, like my safe space. It sounds so funny, but it's in my closet underneath, like under my clothes. And I would go there and I would sit there and I would cry it out and I would journal it out. And that was some of the very first time that I would really start understanding, like, what managing your mind means and how to actually be the person that's in control, not all the years of the programming that was left over. Like, there was so much residue there, so much residue of not enoughness by all the times I listened to society and people tell me that I was not enough. And now it's like, no, I'm way more than enough. Like, this is real. This is in 3D. I didn't just imagine this shit one day. Like, I did the work to get here. And it's also like taking responsibility. Like, yeah, I did that. Not in an egotistical way, but like in a mind-blowing way. I didn't just wake up and I was here. I did all of the work to get me here. And it's allowing yourself to be proud of yourself too, so that can catch up with who you are and who you are meant to be. Yeah.
No, that's so beautifully said. And it sounds like you're talking about a lot of sort of unlearning, right? Unlearning the nonsense that we were programmed with, So what did that look like in the practical sense? So, like, how are you answering those questions for yourself? You're in the closet, you got your notebook, you're crying it out. Like, what does that actually look like in practice, as far as, making your inside believe that what's going on outside is something that you're actually worthy of and that you've earned?
Yeah. So back then I didn't know a lot about life coaching back then, but I
Yeah.
always had like this spiritual guidance. And the law of polarity states that if something exists, the opposite does too. My brain was so programmed to look for the negative, and I started saying like, okay, if the opposite exists, then the positive does too. So when I question this and I tell myself like I accept responsibility, like this is not a fluke. I actually asked myself like, who is coming? Because my brain kept offering me the thought that they are going to come and say that they messed up. So then I asked myself, well, who is coming? And there was no answer to that because no one was coming. Yeah. So the truth starts to kind of seep out, but it takes a while for our brains to recognize that that is actually the truth and the direction that we're going to go into. So for me, it looked like a lot of affirmations, a lot of writing, a lot of crying, that healing process.
It's going into those dark places and feeling those feelings, right? That we often bury down in inside of us somewhere. And one thing that stuck out, what you were talking about, when it came to the test that you kept failing, right? And sort of that decision where you could just kind of give up or restart basic training all over again, with the idea of kind of like pivoting in mind, right? Because I think life also has aspects of it where a certain goal leads us to something even better sometimes that isn't planned, right? But the hardest thing is knowing, is it time to pivot to something else, or do I stay the course, right? Any perspective of how you kind of knew this wasn't a time to pivot to some other goal or some other dream, but instead to stay the course and kind of keep your head down through this tough process?
Yeah. For me, that has always looked like closing my eyes. And I wouldn't have considered myself such a spiritual person as I am now before, because I didn't realize what I was doing or how I was connecting to my higher self, to God. But it's always looked like I will close my eyes and I will take myself to the end state and allow that to see. But it's the emotion that I'm feeling. So I go to me going home. I remember doing this in the barracks. I'm going home. That emotion was not the right emotion in my body. There was like so much resistance to it. And then I go to the place of me doing basic training all over again. And even though that act of itself completely sucks. I mean, nobody wants to be yelled at drill sergeants 24 hours a day. But the end state, I took myself to graduation and seeing my sons in my family, in the crowd. And that is what felt right. And so that pull is what I would always follow. That little kind of pull. It's hard for me to verbalize it a little bit, but it is this emotional connection with yourself and your future self that will guide you the right way always, I believe.
Yeah, no, that's such a practical way to think about it. I really appreciate you sharing that. That actually was helpful for me. I'm sure for a lot of people. And even on this conversation of spirituality, because again, this is not something that people in our community were taught outside of church, right? Outside of your normal religion, the idea of spirituality and a higher self and meditation and, journaling, all these different things, along your journey of getting deeper and deeper into that world, how was it received by the people around you? And sort of how did you fight past some of those feelings of discomfort, because this just seems like this whole woo-woo weird kind of world that we're not supposed to exist in?
Yeah, I think there's definitely still some discomfort around certain people, but I have really learned to have my own back. So if I say something that, feels true and there's no malintent with the way that I'm explaining it, I always hold myself through it, regardless of, I'm intentional on how other people are receiving it or in the context, but I've just really learned to speak my truth. And a lot of my truth is I am a spiritual person now. And the woo-woo stuff, which I used to think was just crazy because I grew up Catholic and it sounds like devil or like crazy or like evil. Is it's definitely the opposite for that. For me now, I feel like there's no way. Let me rephrase this. I feel more supported than I ever have in my entire life because of my spiritual connection to God, to myself, to my future self. And that really started when I lost my husband in a motorcycle accident in 2014 after he died. It took I bottled up all those emotions and I didn't want to look at them for a while. And then I came across this book called Signs. And in the book, it was talking about connecting with the universe, connecting with your loved ones, and how you can ask for signs. And that really, I mean, that'll take us to a whole other conversation, but it really opened the door to my spiritual connection to where I am now, where I'm asking for signs daily, or programming dreams and asking for guidance through my dreams from my intuition. So.
Yeah, no, that's I think one thing that came up for me is it's uncomfortable, but it also feels like the more you talk about these things and express yourself, you notice the people around you begin to be more open to it, right? It's like they've been interested, but they've needed some sort of cosign. You know what I mean? And like when you give them that cosign, you can kind of just see the relief weight, kind of wash over them to a degree, even particularly, much of my career is in the entertainment industry and DJing and partying and, celebrity culture. And to then flip it and talk about stuff like this, I was always nervous about showcasing that side of myself. But it's literally what has begun to really open doors for me in my career and in my life and my connection with people. Because again, I think we're all thinking it. We're all searching for something more than ourselves and what we see in front of us. We're all just really afraid to admit it for whatever reason.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love the way that you put that. Just kind of co-signing off and then allowing that the conversation and the experience to unfold. And that's definitely what happened to me. It was one person that said, you should read the book Signs. I'm like, that's weird. But okay, when you're ready, you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's a great line. When you're ready, you're ready. And one thing you just touched on that I want to get into, if you're comfortable with it, you're talking about the loss of your husband. And I think a lot of people, when they experience tragedy, when they experience loss, it's like a part of them dies as well, especially when you lose somebody close to you, right? And I think it's really hard for us to wrap our mind around the fact that bad things happen to good people, right? And it's easy for us to get mad at the world, God, the universe. I'm doing everything right. Why would you go and make, take somebody away from me or allow this terrible tragedy to happen? Any sort of thing you kind of speak to about how you began to pick up the pieces and didn't allow that to be something that sort of stopped all of the progress that you had made in your life thus far?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing for me to say here is that I was never, it's so weird, but I was never angry. I was hurt, but I was never angry with God for taking James. When he died, I was one semester away from commissioning as an Army officer. It was right at the end of the sprint. And he died in November and I commissioned in May. And so, of course, it would be normal for me to take semester off. I remember my major didn't think I was going to come back for that next semester. But here's like what happened for me. My sons and I, obviously we took it really hard. I drove, my mom came and picked us up, and from the time that she drove me home to her house, I don't think I left for almost a month. So her and my sisters went to go pack up our apartment and we moved in with my mom. And looking back at this time, even though I didn't want to get off that couch, I remember telling myself, I've always had this line in my head that helped me get through school, that helped me get through everything, is that time is going to pass no matter what it is that you're doing. So you might as well do what you need to do so that when the time does get there that you wanted to have that done, it's done. And so it was 30 days. I was on the couch and finally school was about to start up. And I thought about postponing it. And then I thought about what the mission was and what I was working towards and what we were working towards. And then I looked around and I said, if I stop now, my life will stay equal to or a little bit better than what it is now. And I'm not willing to compromise. And so I got off the couch and I finished what I started. And it wasn't easy. On the outside, I was judged. My family, not my immediate family, but, uncles, aunts, they didn't understand how it was so easy for me, quote unquote. And here's the thing. We don't do things because they're easy. We do them because they need to get done.
Sure.
And I started thinking about what I wanted my future to look like, what I was working on with my boys. And I knew that I had to get up and go. And I knew that it had to be done and that I couldn't wait another time. So it's like the grieving went with. It didn't stop me from doing what I needed to do. It was like more of I don't have an answer for the how, like how I did it. It just did.
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. But I think something that's stuck out kind of in what you're saying is, there is no right way. You just have to feel how you feel and allow yourself to respond accordingly, and I even when you're talking about like family members, I'm sure who are saying, how could you just hop back up and start your life, keep going with your life type of thing, and passing judgment in that way. It reminds me of one of my aunts who I was very close with died of cancer, and I remember we were there and she would, they had pulled the plug and everybody was crying, and I didn't showcase that emotion in the moment. And I remember one particular person just like looking at me almost in judgment, like waiting for me to express something, or looking that this was my moment to validate how I felt about that person. Right. And, I share that story just to say that like, we all have our own process, regardless of what it is, be it, the tragedies like we're talking about, or just the way that we interpret things, the way that we process our emotions, whatever it might be. And we can't get lost in trying to play by somebody else's rules, I think, at the end of the day, and for you, hopping back in there, finishing what you started was a part of your grieving process, right? It was a part of you healing. And there's no guilt or shame in the way that you handle it, just because it might be different from someone else. For whatever reason, I don't know, that just kind of resonated with me, and I wanted to kind of put an asterisk next to that.
No, thank you. You're absolutely right. You are 100% right. I went full force. Like that was the healing. And it was also the way I didn't know how to deal with all of these emotions either. But I knew that, I guess I just had this fear that if I stayed too long on the couch, then I was always going to stay there. And so I took it as like fuel, vámonos, go. And we all grieve differently, but grief is grief. And we only grieve because we loved. So for someone to judge me for the way that I'm grieving, no.
Yeah, 100%. And that applies to like just every aspect of life. I think that's so much of like just the fucking mental hurdle that we put in front of ourselves, is because we're basing it upon what somebody else tells us is the right way, is the way that we should be doing things, shouldn't be doing things. This is what we should have accomplished at this age, you know what I mean? Or whatever it might be. And that is like one of the hardest barriers I feel like to break through, is like realizing that these are all societal constructs and there's no such thing. This is all just like figments of people's upbringing and their imagination. And like, there's no right way to do anything. It doesn't matter how old you are, whatever it might be. Like, you can go out and do what it is that you want to do. You have your own process. And you should trust yourself within that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, absolutely. And really define your own expectations.
I love that. Can you expound upon that a little bit? What that looks like?
A lot of work that I do with my clients, exactly what you said, like the shoulds come up. I should.
Right.
And then we're like, well, why do you think that? Well, so-and-so is doing it this way. And we see comparison and judgment and doubt. And I'm like, you know what? I want you to define what this looks like for you. And once you actually define it, then you can make decisions, and then you're going to hit that so much quicker, right? It's like collapsing the timeline, because now it's you against you with you, not you and them, or what we think it should look like. Because my life doesn't look like anything that what should have or have it look like. Or people see me now and they're like, you must have had the best upbringing. You must have never struggled with any of this. And that is definitely not the truth.
Yeah, I mean, your story is so powerful, and I think that's what we also have to kind of look at is like, all of these things that happen, they are empowering when you look at them from that way as well. You know what I mean? Like, they're a part of my story. All the hardships, all the doors that got slammed in my face, like, they're why I am who I am right now. They're the reason why I can see things the way I see them now. Why I know when it's time to take action. And I know how to, bring an idea to life. Right? It's because I failed so many times at it prior to, and it's the reason why I can now connect with people on a deeper level, is because I know what it's like to have struggled the way that you're struggling right now. And there's so much. I guess there's so much beauty in those sort of scars that society tells us we need to kind of hide.
Yes, and that's exactly what I call iconic vulnerability. Where you can share. I know, like, we look around and we see everything tied in bows for many of us. And when you can actually show the wounds, and not just show the wounds, but you show the lessons and how you overcame them and the mentality that brought you there, that's really what allows people to see the breakthrough in you for them. So I'm writing a memoir that's a life coaching book as well. And it's called Iconic Vulnerability. And the way that I'm writing it is really showcasing the battle plans to win the war on self-doubt. Like, you can, no matter where it is that you are, we can find the gap from where you are now to where you want to be. And it is possible if you say it is, and you believe it is, and you have the desire to close it and get there.
Yeah. And I did actually want to touch on that, the idea of iconic vulnerability, but you have on your website kind of a few core parts of the program that you do, right? And that's one of them is the magic of iconic vulnerability you talk about. I want to run down I guess there was like 4 that you were talking about. I want to kind of get into a little tidbit of what people can kind of expect from some of the program that you're doing. So the first one was the iconic mindset transformation. So what does that mean? Somebody, wants to sign up and work with you, and you kind of have this blueprint. What is the iconic mindset transformation part of the plan?
Yeah. So that is my process on demand. So in 60 minutes, what happens is a lot of us say, like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I feel really blocked, right? How many times have we said that? Or I'm not good with money and I don't know why, or I wish I could be more confident. And so what this does, it's a deep mindset, like a meditative state that you go into, and you're listening to me. And what happens is you go back to 3 scenes from your childhood. And your mind in this level literally will show you the reason why you have those blocks or where you picked up that belief. So I talk about it like, now you're going to see this TV in front of you playing just like a play. Tell me what you're hearing and tell me what you're seeing, and I guide you through it. So after we come back from those 3 scenes, you're like, that's why I have so much doubt. That's where I got the belief that I'm not good with money. That's why my confidence wavers. That's why I don't do things, or I procrastinate. Like, that's actually the root of it. And when we can get to the root of it, remember the law of polarity, something exists, the other side does too. Then now, as an adult, we're consciously aware. Those things cannot have any more power once you are actually aware of them and you make the decision to change them. And so the other part of that is the transformation, where we go in there and we start feeding your mind all of the new affirmations and new beliefs that you want to have about yourself. I'm really into the power of autosuggestion, which is, in a meditative state and listening to an audio and doing your affirmations, because the brain, one of the rules of the mind is that the brain doesn't know the difference between a truth and a lie. And so if you picked up a belief that is a lie from your childhood and it's holding on, because that's what our brain does. It just remembers everything in the subconscious.
Right.
If it doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie, then you can start feeding it the truth and overcome that lie. And that is by rewiring those neural pathways, which we do in the innovative mindset transformation. And that is at the beginning, because I want you to see and no longer hold on to any of those stories. Like, those have no more power. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I love that, because I think that so many of us don't realize a lot of this shit is just programming from when we were a kid, right? Things that we picked up along the way. And I know, at least for me, like, the initial inclination is like, I'm broken. There's something wrong with me, right? Not that I've developed some sort of trauma loop or, some sort of way of thinking or seeing the world, but that there's actually something inherently wrong with me, right? And the way that you're breaking it down when you talk about, no, this is just something you learned, then that is like, there's something actionable behind it, right? Oh, I can unlearn this now, and it doesn't have to be my story anymore, rather than I'm just broken and this is going to be the way that I am for the entirety of my life, and I have to kind of just throw my hands up and accept what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Our minds are so powerful. Once we really start to unravel and untangle from those old stories, it's amazing what we can do.
Yeah, no, it really is. So the next one that you talk about is Foundation Life Coaching Course, Massive Action Executive. So what is that part about?
Yeah, so we do goals in 90 days at a time. So I don't have my book here. So I have something that I called 90 Days to Done. And I think that one's a little bit further down, but we talk about brain focused planning. So if you can't tell, I'm a big student of the mind, and I love our brain. I love learning about our brain. So when we can give our brain focus guided direction and look at things as results and experiences of what we want to have, we're going to get so much more done. So one of them is on time, and that's brain focused planning. Another one is your past self and your future self. And that is such an incredible module, because you start learning about more of those stories that have been clinging on, and you get to see the way that how those old beliefs from our past self starts clouding what we believe is true in the future. And the future is only created by the thoughts you have right now. So if you think about that from your past self, your current self in this state right now, and your future self, the future doesn't give a shit about your past self. Only we do in the current self. And once we can let go and not give a shit either, then it's like free game. It is an open canvas for us to create anything that we want.
Yeah, that's very well. I love that the future self doesn't give a shit about your past self. I love that so much. That's such a good way to think about it. So we had touched on the idea of iconic vulnerability, but I did want to dive a little bit deeper into the concept of vulnerability, because I think it's something that many of us have been brought up looking at as a sign of weakness, right? When you are being vulnerable, you are too in touch with your feelings, particularly as a man. I know for me, growing up, for whatever reason, I was a kid who was very expressive and in touch with his feelings, but that was shamed amongst, my peers. So I began to bury that deeper inside of me as I got older. And it's taken years at this point to kind of then now be comfortable once again to kind of wear my heart on my sleeve in that way. So can we talk a bit about the power of vulnerability and why it is such a necessity for us to be like a fully actualized human being?
Yeah. I really believe that what's been said about vulnerability is wrong, that it makes us weak, that it exposes us, that we should hide all of the things that sometimes that we really want to say. Right. And we put like these buffers on and this kind of a mask on and how we think we should show up and how people should receive us. And when you are vulnerable with yourself, like you actually, when I say vulnerable, I really want everyone to think about writing down the actual things that your brain is saying to you. Don't filter it, because that's where all the gold is. Once we can, we take like stock inventory of what's in our head right now. And if we can audit it and challenge it, then we are going to be able to, oh my God, we can persevere, we can change things, we can find things that we like, wait a second, I don't know where that came from. I actually don't like doing that. Or I actually like doing this. And I mean, I've done this within my own marriage too, like things that I've showed up different ways for a long time. And finally I'm like, that's just not me anymore. I have outgrown this. And now I'm going to be vulnerable enough to show you where I'm at. And if you can meet me, then let's do it. But if not, then this is complete. And think about when we're not willing to be vulnerable with ourselves and show ourselves the actual true raw emotions, how can we close the gap to where we actually want to go? Because that is part of the path there. So when I talk about iconic vulnerability in a life coaching space, it's coming to a call, allowing yourself to get into the seat and knowing that there are other women in here. And it's okay. Like you're going to show up and you're going to be vulnerable. You're going to come and get coached. You're going to come and say like, this is what I wanted to do, but this is what I'm actually doing. And you're going to get vulnerable enough to tell us why, and for us to figure out why, like, what are the emotions that you're willing, not willing to feel that will actually enable you to get there. And you can't find those without actually telling the truth. You can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. We oftentimes, we lie to ourselves so much too, right? Like we try to hide from the things that we're really feeling. And I think, again, it goes back to like societal constructs as well, where we feel like we're a bad person if we think a certain way or we don't want a certain thing, right? You know, it is the way the mind, the way the mind, I guess, is trying to protect itself as well. The way it's perceiving threats, I guess, you know, it's really interesting, and it's all really necessary to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And one thing I wanted to talk about as well, Brenda had mentioned this, but she was talking about you're big on like mental exercise, right? Like the idea of like a mental gym, right? It's not just the idea of working your body out, but your mind as well. So can we talk a bit about that, a bit about the things that you do to kind of keep yourself sharp and to progress the way you're thinking and processing?
Yeah. So I really do believe I have such a strong sense of mental agility. And that's because I floss my brain out. Like just as we floss our teeth. If we're not aware of what's going up in here in our head with all of our thoughts that are seeping in, I mean, we think more than 60,000 things a day, right? We have more than 60,000 thoughts a day. And if we're not actually aware of what's in here, just as if we don't floss our teeth or brush our teeth, our brain starts to smell. Like imagine the last time that you just exploded and you're like, holy shit, where did that come from? It came because it's been a buildup of like thought plaque, right? Like thought plaque in our brain. Yeah. So what I do, and I teach my members to do, is we just do a quick thought download. So I'll sit and I'll do a quick thought download. And sometimes if like a thought's not appearing in the morning or what's something in there, I'm like, what is the feeling that I'm feeling? I'm feeling anxious, and I'll just write it down. And then I'm like, why am I feeling these feelings? What's actually going on? I get very vulnerable with myself and I start writing the shit that's in my head. Sometimes if I'm working towards a big goal, I notice that I start to get nervous, or maybe I'll start feeling like insecure if I'm actually good enough to reach it. And so what I will do is questions will start coming up, right? Like we start questioning things. The thing is, not many of us actually answer the questions. You want to answer them and you want to get them on paper, because just the act of getting it on paper, when your brain can see it visibly, tangibly in 3D on paper, it starts to look at it differently. Then you answer it, and then you're able to take yourself from the space of like not actually being good enough to where I know it's done. Like I take myself, I do a future hit, I go to the place where it's done. I embody myself with that, with the energetics, the emotions of what I'm going to feel then. And I allow that to be my blueprint to get me there. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't clean out my thoughts every day and see like what's going in here. What do I actually want to think? What are the thoughts that are going to get me closer versus what are those self-limiting, self-doubting thoughts that are holding me back? And I know that that's happening when I'm procrastinating. What am I actually thinking up here? So that's one thing. And then another big thing that I'm really big on now is working out, lifting weights, eating right. I think it took me a long time to get here. And that could be a thought too. But I was in this cycle of start a program, stop a program. So my body, like I lost trust with myself. So I've been slowly rebuilding that trust back in, and now it's fully there. It's metabolized, it's crystallized. Like I completely trust myself to take excellent care of my body and my mind.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we don't realize, or definitely not taught at all. Like all our whole entire body, mentally, physically, they're all working in conjunction with one another. And when one is out of sort, you can't expect to be operating at your highest level, you know, and you have to be mindful of what's going on in all the different parts of you and listening. And I love that idea you just said about the like mental flossing and kind of just like clearing out your mind. Like it sounds so practical and obvious, yet I can guarantee most of us have never done that or don't do it on a regular basis, right? But yeah, I love practical things like that. It's so beautiful. So last thing I wanna get your take on from your website. You had a quote that I thought was really, really profound. You said, "We believe your past doesn't matter, and neither does anything you've tried before." So what exactly does that mean for anybody at home? Expound upon that quote right there for me.
Yeah. So I'm really big on your past is not your future. So no matter what happened an hour ago, a minute ago, yesterday, 15 years ago, none of that is going to determine what you're capable of doing. So number one, put that up there. The other thing, so many of us will say, I tried to do that and it didn't work. I tried to do that and it didn't work. And so what we do is we start negotiating with our brain. And our brain, its number one job is to keep us safe, just like you said earlier. Its number one job is to keep us safe. So it is going to put up flags all of the time. Be like, no. Remember, Esperanza, we tried this workout program and you failed. You already tried it 3 times and it didn't work out. So why do you think we're going to be able to do this now? Same thing with like school. Remember you failed that class. Remember you dropped out, all of these things. When you get really clear on what your actual desire is and you back that with belief, it doesn't matter what you've tried before. It doesn't matter how many times you failed. It doesn't matter if it's brand new or if this is your 50th time trying. Once you get clear on, I'm making the decision, this is what I'm going to do starting today, right? And you get clear with the desire, you build up the belief. And I do a lot of building up belief as part of my mental gym, as part of the self-coaching. You build up the belief, and then we amplify that with expectation. The same expectation as if, so you and I had an expectation today to get on and record today. So the same way that you expected to sign on at the right time, hit the record button on Zoom, that's the way that I want people thinking about their goals. Like the same as if you were going to clean your house because someone's coming over and you're having a birthday party. That same level of expectation that you expect them to be there, start expecting yourself to hit that goal. Start expecting yourself to hit that milestone, because desire plus belief times expectation is going to give you a result in the experience that you want to have. So it doesn't matter. Notice, like, nowhere in this equation am I saying plus everything else that you learned in the past and all the other times. No. We get to leave that at any time. You literally just have the option of letting it go right now. So as people listen to this and they hear that, maybe they're driving in their car, when they step out of their car, it can be gone. Sure. Like, as simple as that. But many of us don't even realize that we have that opportunity, that's available to us.
Absolutely. And even when you're talking about, I love setting that expectation, you're also taking some of the power of it away, right? Because I think oftentimes we have this goal and we build it up in our head, and it seems so grand, and I don't know how I'm going to get there, how I'm going to do it. It's kind of like writing a paper in school, and you procrastinate, and then you start doing, you're like, this actually wasn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? Like I got it done in 6 hours and I had 3 months to get it done. You know what I mean? Like, but we just built it up in our mind and we kept putting it off. And I love that idea of, like, you're really just like making it a practical thing that you're not even thinking twice about it being difficult. You're just saying, hey, this is my expectation. I'm going to go and do that tomorrow, whatever it is that I am kind of striving for.
Yes. Just like when I was talking about basic training, it didn't matter that I failed. That totally sucked, let me tell you. But I always expected myself to have my sons at graduation. That is the mental picture and the expectation that was in my head. That was the future hit that I would take myself to. And because I expected it, if you expect something, you're going to have it. It's when the level of expectation drops that you need to figure out, why is it dropping? What emotions are you unwilling to feel? Why are you resisting it? And then you're going to make a decision that's going to help you get closer to it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because what something that just came to my head is we're able to follow other people's expectations, right? I have to be at work at 9 a.m. tomorrow. But then when you tell yourself, when I get home from work tomorrow at 6, I need to do this. You start negotiating with yourself and you start cutting yourself some slack. Totally. I'll do it after this. I'll do it this. I'll procrastinate. I'll do it tomorrow. And it's funny how we don't have that same level of, respect, I guess, for ourselves as we do for those who are an authority figure in our lives.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. And I think a lot of that has to do with building trust in ourselves. It's that integrity. Like, if I say I'm going to do something, this is the reason why, number one, I'm doing this thing. You want to see it. You want to see it in the bigger picture of how it's fitting into the overall goal. And you know that it's part of the recipe. It's part of the path. So it's like trusting yourself, being in integrity with yourself. Whatever you say that you're going to do, you're going to do it. And it takes time to unchatter and unclutter the brain from, like, is it really going to make a difference today?
Right.
And then answer that question. Yes, it's going to make a difference because. And if it's a no, then don't do it.
I love that. I love that way of thinking. Well, Esperanza, I appreciate this conversation. I could talk with you about this for like 4 more hours, but I know we all have lives outside of this. We'll have to do a part two at some point. But anybody who is interested in working with you, becoming a part of the program that you offer, where can they find more information?
Absolutely. They can join me in the Life Coaching Lounge. So they can go to lebroncoaching.com and find me there. You can also find me on Instagram at Esperanza Lebron.
I love it. Well, again, thank you so much for hopping on. I love the conversation, the work that you're doing. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure. So amazing.
Man, big shout out to my guest this week, Esperanza Lebron, for hopping on the show. Man, I love that conversation. I love talking about this kind of stuff and just like hacking our minds and optimizing them and healing and being vulnerable and all of the above. And I just think, I want us as a community to embrace this more. I want this to be more of a regular conversation for us because I think that is so incredibly powerful, particularly with a lot of the shit that we go through as people of color, the unique experiences that we have that have shaped our world that we currently exist in today, and many of the limiting beliefs that have developed as a result of the way we were brought up. Like, there's so much unlearning that has to be done, and people like Esperanza are helping us do that work and helping us be better for tomorrow, which I'm all about, as you guys know. So big shout out to her for hopping on the show. I really loved that conversation. I think she's doing amazing things. So now with that said, let's quickly tie everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusion Stew.
Time for Conclusion Stew.
All right, we are back. And I think there's so many things I took away from that conversation. And I don't know. I think in the grander sense of it, this isn't about me, but I'll kind of get to what I'm getting at here. But conversations like this one make me feel like I'm really walking in my purpose. Because I love that I have a space, that I've created a space where I'm able to really just connect with people and connect with people that inspire me, be it their business acumen, the work that they're doing, or the story that they are sharing with me, right? And to me, this conversation was just all of that on display, and being able to have real conversations with people and connect with those who are trying to better themselves and who want more for their community and those around them. I don't know. I find that to be so special, particularly because I didn't grow up around anybody who was into any of this sort of spiritual work like I was, or like I am, I should say. And that to me was just a beautiful kind of encapsulation, I guess, of all the work of being able to create spaces like this one where two human beings can just have an honest conversation with one another. And I can't speak for her, but I know for me, I walk away feeling inspired and just a bit more healed, I think, a bit more at peace with life and everything that's involved in it. And I think that to me is like the bigger takeaway of it all. I think she obviously spoke about a lot of really amazing sort of practical things. I thought the mental flossing was like so obvious, but fucking but none of us ever think of it. It's so genius. The idea of like really clearing out our brains, uncluttering it, writing down our thoughts, answering those questions that we have, and creating that sort of clarity. And I think even what we talked about with physical health and how the body and the mind, everybody's working together for our benefit, and we have to make sure that we're doing our best to keep each part of ourselves healthy and to be listening to what they need, right? And I just think also the idea of her talking about your past doesn't matter. Her story is by no means an easy one. A teenage mother, no high school diploma, joining the military, having to go through basic training all over again, and being okay with that and just pushing through, losing her husband. These are really difficult moments. And it's incredible that she's now sharing her gift and her mindset with others, and again, even for me, I'm inspired after talking to her. And I think there's just this beautiful synergy kind of happening And I don't know. I think I get caught up in thinking about it and trying to analyze it, because I think it's what I've been looking for so long, and it's hard to recognize it in the moment when you realize I've begun to build the world that I've been seeking. And that I'm having that realization right now. Like, I've yearned for people who look like me, who are on a similar journey or are asking similar questions. And now I created a space for that, a safe space for that. And the conversations are happening. The connections are happening. And there's just something so beautiful about that. And I'm like, I know I'm going all over the place because I'm just kind of having realizations in the moment. But there's just something so beautiful about speaking to people like her and hearing that story. And the way that interaction has now touched my life, and hopefully it's touched yours, and all these little interactions that we have with people, be it in person, virtually, through a podcast, whatever it is, listening, like, we're all, leaving a mark on one another's lives. And I'm proud to say that, I'm trying to leave a positive one, and it's beautiful to see other people out there who are sharing in that same, desire as well. And yeah, I don't know. I think I can't really sum up this show any further than just the fact that I thought it was a beautiful conversation. I love the work that she's doing, and I hope that it's opened other people's eyes to, other information and other, experiences or opportunities or tools that might be out there for you to, find the healing that you're looking for, to optimize your mind, to get to where you want to be in this life, because, like I was kind of alluding to at the beginning when I was talking with my dad, like, I know that I have certain gifts, but that's not why I'm necessarily here. The things that got me here are not things that someone else couldn't do as long as they were focused and disciplined, right? There are a lot of people who are far more talented than me that I grew up with, that came up with in the industry, that are now working 9-to-5 jobs that they hate, right? So it's not about talent. It's not about natural ability or gift. It's about that extra stuff that we were kind of talking about with Esperanza, and it's that mindset, right? It's the mindset that gets you what you want. And that's what you have to realize and understand, that you are in control of that. So you can get to work and develop the type of mindset that will help you succeed at whatever it is that you're trying to do in this life. And that's what you have to remember. You're not doomed for a life of misery. You're not destined for failure. As long as you do the work and you work on that mindset towards being able to bring whatever it is that you want in this life, to fruition. If you get your mind right, it can happen for you too. That's it. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Man, we're doing our mastermind group. I've seen some of the people for the Just Be Social Club, the monthly mastermind. I've seen some people get added to the waiting list this week. So thank you for sending emails. Brenda@mindofayounglord.com if you want to be added for the waiting list for our monthly mastermind group. Just more people trying to be better, connecting, sharing things. It's been really beautiful to be a part of thus far. My book, Just Be, we're shipping them out. They're available right now. I'm sending them. They're physically out. justbe.nyc. Pick up a copy now. It's all shipping right away. Street Talk Podcast, all that good stuff. Thank y'all for tuning in. I will catch you on Thursday for our Thursday Trends episode. Now I'm going to get me some sleep. But until then, stay safe. Talk to you soon. Peace.